Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar. This week we're going to be going over using MapPoint data in Maptitude. So I'll be going over a couple of things such as opening a .ptm file and what you can import from that. I'll also be importing a streets and trips file, assuming people want to see that. So I'm going to start off the session today by displaying a poll. And it is going to ask if you have MapPoint or data from MapPoint which you wish to display in Maptitude. Okay, just so everyone knows, this entire webinar will be recorded and you'll receive a link to the recording tomorrow around 12:30 Eastern time via email. And there will be a short question and answer at the end of this session. If I remember correctly, this is one of the shorter webinars, so it'll take around 10 to 15 minutes for the instructional portion, and then we'll leave the last 15 to 20 minutes or so for a question and answer. Okay, so we can get started. To open a PTM file from this home window, you want to choose Open a File. So that's what I'm going to pick here. So I'll choose that and hit OK. And then I'll be browsing for my training PTM file. So I have it in my Maptitude 2020 and then training folder. And from the bottom right drop down here, we're going to find the .ptm option. If you're opening a streets and trips.est file, that option is right below it. So you'll find those both here. Mine is just called mydata.ptm. So we'll see we have a number of different options here. And I'm going to display a poll, which is going to decide which options we choose. So it's going to ask if you'll be importing all of your data from the PTM. Okay, so to pick and choose what we're importing from this PTM, we're going to uncheck and check different boxes on here on the side. So there's an import column you'll see, and you can either check or uncheck different options depending on if you want to import them or not. So for example, if I only wanted to import, let's say BJ's, or let's say Costco and Sam's Club locations, and I don't want to import the BJ's Wholesale Club locations, I can uncheck this box, and now it's only going to import these two. If you're importing territories, you'll see this territory table option under type, and you'll have an option to launch the territory wizard. So you'll see launch will be checked and you'll see territory wizard. If you do have territories, you will make sure that this is checked and this is set to territory wizard. And mine has already done that by default, so I can go ahead and hit OK. So right now it is importing my territory table. So once that completes, we have a number of point locations. We also have a table here containing the zip codes and the territory that those zip codes fall into. and it shows me what was imported here. So I can hit done to close that, and the territory wizard will launch. So you remember that I checked that box at the very bottom that said launch territory wizard. So this is the territory wizard that pops up. This is going to allow us to turn this table, which contains all the zip codes and all of the territories in those those territories that those zip codes fall into an interactive territory layer that we can, work with and manipulate. So I'm going to create it from my territory table, and that's sales regions. Usually with this wizard, you're good to just hit next through the whole thing, but I'll show you some additional options that you can check if you want. The defaults on this are going to be good. We can go ahead and hit next here. And we have an option to add tracking fields. So I'm going to display another poll to determine if we want to add tracking fields here. So it's going to ask if you want to include additional data with the territories. So if you want to include additional data, you can do so on this step, and you can do that by clicking on the plus. If you want to add demographic data, you can choose add geography layer fields, and that'll take you to a screen where you can pick and choose what demographics you want to include. And if you want to track fields from another file, such as sales numbers, number of customers, that sort of thing, you can choose import fields from a file. I'm going to choose import fields from a file, and I have a market data Excel sheet. I'll choose that. My geography field is zip, because my territories are built out of zip codes. And I can choose what I want to track. So I'll track all 4 of these, and I'll hit OK, and then finish. So it's going to convert my territory table into a territory layer. And from here, we can use the territory manager to work with these territories and manipulate them. You can add area to territories, remove from others. We're not going to go over how to adjust the territory assignments in this webinar. If you do want to know about that, we have a bunch of videos on doing so, and there are separate webinars on working with territories because they're a larger topic. So under tutorials here, we have creating territories in Maptitude and working with territories in Maptitude. I'm going to go ahead and link this working with territories in Maptitude in the chat. So if anyone wants to, check it out, they can. If you are building territories, I highly recommend checking that video out. It's very helpful. You can also see that from our PTM, a couple of different things were imported. So we have our territories layer, and we have our Costco locations layer and Sam's Club locations. So these were point layers that were imported from the MapPoint map. They should have something around 500 locations, but any number of points that you had in MapPoint should import directly over. If you want to view any data for these points, you can right-click on the layer and choose New Data View, and it'll show you the backend for it. So the name of the point location and any associated data with it, as well as the address. And I believe that pretty much covers importing the PTM. So assuming people want to see importing the streets and trips file, I can show that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and display that poll. So opening a streets and trips file is going to be pretty similar. Again, if you were working from the home window when you first open the software, you can choose that open a file option and browse for your file there. If you already have a map open and you want to add a route to this map, we can choose file and then open. And then from the bottom right dropdown, we're going to choose .est. So it's right below that .ptm option that I picked before. I'm going to double click on it. So we see it's going to import a couple different things. And again, if we want to import some of these things or, all of them, we can check and uncheck these options for import here. I'm going to be importing both of these. One is the stops and one is the route waypoints. So one of them is a layer of points similar to my Sam's Club and Costco locations that are on the map right now. The other one is the route itself. So this is going to actually open up the routing manager and add that route. So since I'm going to be making a route, I'm going to check this box down here for launch, and I want to make sure it's launching the routing manager. So I'll have routing manager selected. So the default settings here look pretty good. I can hit OK. One route waypoint database was imported and one point database was imported. It's good. And it's going to open up the routing manager and it's going to add that route to the map. So similar to the territories, I'm not going to go over all the details of the routing manager here. There is a separate webinar on using the routing manager and creating routes. If you want to check out a video on creating routes, you can do so on our learning portal, and I will send a link to that now. If you want to access any of these videos, you can do so from the help menu. So if you go to help, like I'm doing here, you'll see Maptitude Learning Portal. Click on that. It's going to launch a web browser with our learning portal here. You can click on or hover over the videos dropdown and choose tutorials to see all the video tutorials. You'll also see recordings of past webinars under the videos and then webinars article. And so you can check out these here as well. The last thing I'm going to cover is saving a Maptitude file. So once you've already imported your PTM file, how you can go about saving it as our workspace file format. So under the file menu, you can choose save workspace as and give your file a name and save it somewhere. So this is pretty similar to when saving .ptm files in MapPoint. It's just we have our own file type, so you can choose where to save it, give it a name, etc. To save a route, you can click on the Save Route button within the routing manager. So you'll see that down here on the bottom left. The route will save separate from the workspace. It's so that you can open up multiple routes on a single workspace if you have a lot of points imported onto it. So I'd recommend, saving your route as well as the workspace if you have a route and a workspace. And the route will save as a .route file. So if I click on Save Route, again, you can give the route a name, and it's only going to have one type, which is a .route file. Finally, to open a workspace, you can choose File, Open Workspace, and this will let you browse for a workspace that you've saved previously. Or from the home menu, when you first launch the software, you'll see an Open an Existing Workspace option, and you can choose that and browse for your workspace.